The perspective 99% of people are missing. South China Sea's $5.3 trillion chess game, while the world fixates on the dramatic headlines of water cannon battles and military posturing in the South China Sea. There's one critical factor 99% of people are completely missing. This isn't really about territorial disputes at all. It's about the world's most profitable maritime business model disguised as geopolitical conflict. The reality behind the information smokescreen on July 11, 2025, as the world marked the 9th anniversary of the International Arbitral Tribunal ruling that invalidated China's expansive South China Sea Claims 12. Something far more significant was happening in the shadows. While diplomats issued routine statements and naval commanders made predictable declarations about failed coercion 3, the real architects of this prolonged tension were counting unprecedented profits from a conflict economy that has transformed a territorial dispute into the world's most lucrative geopolitical theater. The South China Sea carries $5.3 trillion in annual trade for, but here's what no one dares to acknowledge. The ongoing tensions have created a parallel economy worth hundreds of billions that thrives specifically because the conflict never resolves. This isn't incompetence or diplomatic failure. It's the most sophisticated business model of the 21st century. When we flip the lens, the silent winner's maritime insurance, the hidden gold mine while everyone focuses on military confrontations. Lloyd's of London and other maritime insurers have quietly transformed South China Sea tensions into their most profitable venture since the Suez Canal crisis. War risk premiums for vessels transiting these waters have increased by 400% since 20,235, generating billions in additional revenue. The genius lies in the calibrated nature of the tensions. Chinese Coast Guard vessels use water cannons against Philippine fishing boat 6, aggressive enough to justify higher insurance rates, but not severe enough to completely halt shipping. This creates the perfect sweet spot: maximum premium extraction with minimal actual payouts. Insurance companies now offer geopolitical risk dashboards that actively monitor South China Sea Incident 7, not to prevent conflicts, but to optimize pricing models. Every confrontation between Chinese and Philippine vessels triggers algorithmic adjustments that instantly increase premiums across the entire Indo-Pacific shipping network. The arms trade's perfect storm, the global arms trade, has found its new Afghanistan. South Korea alone signed a $15 billion defense deal with Poland in 2028. Using South China Sea tensions as justification for European military modernization. But the real money isn't in the headlines, it's in the secondary markets. China's arms sales to Pakistan, including 40 J-35 stealth fighters 9, aren't just about regional influence. They're about creating a domino effect where every Southeast Asian nation feels compelled to modernize its military. The Philippines' recent defense agreements with Japan, conducting joint naval drills in May 202510, have triggered a procurement cascade worth over $200 billion across the region. The silent winner defense contractors who have turned South China Sea tensions into a subscription service. Unlike traditional arms sales, this model requires continuous upgrades, joint exercises, and interoperability improvements that generate revenue streams for decades. The shipping route Roulette, here's the angle 99% miss. While shorter routes through the South China Sea become more expensive due to insurance premiums, shipping companies with established alternative routes are experiencing windfall profits. The Cape of Good Hope route, traditionally seen as inefficient, has become a premium service. Container shipping companies have quietly restructured their fleets, with some vessels permanently assigned to high-risk South China Sea routes where they can charge premium rates, while others service the longer but safer alternative routes at standard pricing. This creates a two-tier system where conflict equals profit maximization. The complete picture only outsiders can see. BRICS. The timing isn't coincidental. The recent BRICS summit in Brazil, July 6-7, 2025, welcomed Indonesia as a new member and added 11 partner countries 11-12. The timing of intensified South China Sea incidents immediately after this expansion isn't coincidental. It's strategic positioning. China's aggressive posturing in the South China Sea serves dual purposes. Domestically, it projects strength to BRICS partners about challenging Western naval dominance. Internationally, it creates justification for the expanded BRICS security cooperation framework. The Philippines' response, including joint exercises with non-regional partners 10, plays perfectly into China's narrative of Western encirclement. The energy market transformation, while attention focuses on military confrontations. The real transformation is happening in energy markets. The South China Sea contains an estimated 11 billion barrels of oil and 31.2 billion barrels of oil equivalent in natural gas 13. But the genius isn't in extraction. It's in the strategic ambiguity. China's recent discovery of the Lingshui 36-1 gas field containing over 100 billion cubic meters of natural gas 13 was announced precisely when tensions escalated. This isn't about actual energy production. It's about creating energy security narratives that justify massive infrastructure investments and long-term contracts. Southeast Asian nations are investing billions in offshore drilling capabilities, not because they expect to extract resources peacefully, but because the capability itself becomes a bargaining chip in future negotiations. Malaysia, Vietnam, and the Philippines are essentially building energy infrastructure that functions as diplomatic leverage. The financial services bonanza, the most overlooked silent winner, is the financial services industry. Currency hedging, political risk insurance, and trade finance related to South China Sea tensions have created a $50 billion annual market that didn't exist a decade ago. Banks now offer South China Sea risk portfolios that allow investors to essentially bet on the continuation of tensions. Derivatives tied to shipping delays, insurance premium fluctuations, and energy price volatility have created a financialized version of the conflict where prolonged tension equals sustained profits. Historical pattern recognition. The 50-year cycle analyzing similar maritime disputes from the past century reveals a troubling pattern. Successful territorial conflicts are never resolved, they're monetized. The Kashmir dispute has generated over $2.3 trillion in related spending since 1947. The Israeli-Palestinian conflict has created entire industries worth hundreds of billions annually. The South China Sea is following the same trajectory, but with 21st century sophistication. Unlike previous conflicts that eventually reached resolution or frozen status, this dispute has been engineered to remain in perpetual manageable tension mode. The historical parallel isn't the Cuban Missile Crisis, which resolved quickly, or the Cold War, which ended definitively, but rather the Israel-Palestine model, sufficient tension to justify continuous military spending, insurance premiums, and financial hedging, but never severe enough to completely disrupt the underlying profitable activities. The next move, what 99% won't see coming based on this analysis. The next 18 months will witness three developments that mainstream media will miss entirely. Phase 1. The institutionalization of conflict. By early 2026, we'll see the establishment of formal South China Sea risk management institutions, think tanks, insurance bodies, and financial instruments that essentially codify the conflict as a permanent feature of global commerce. These won't aim to resolve tensions, but to optimize profit extraction from them. Phase 2. The subscription economy expansion. Defense contractors will introduce South China Sea security-as-a-service models, where Southeast Asian nations pay monthly fees for continuous military updates, intelligence sharing, and joint exercise participation. This transforms one-time arms sales into recurring revenue streams. Phase 3. The financial derivatives explosion. By 2027, we'll see the launch of South China Sea futures, financial instruments that allow global investors to trade on the likelihood of specific types of incidents, shipping delays, or diplomatic developments. This will create a market where global financial institutions have direct financial incentives to maintain not resolve tensions. The shocking truth they're hiding: the South China Sea dispute isn't a failure of diplomacy. It's the most successful business model in modern geopolitics. Every stakeholder, from insurance companies to arms manufacturers to shipping corporations, has discovered that managed conflict is infinitely more profitable than either war or peace. China's failed coercion in the South China Sea isn't really failure. It's calibrated success. Beijing has created a permanent tension state that justifies its military expansion, provides domestic nationalism benefits, and creates strategic ambiguity around energy resources, all while never crossing the line into actual warfare that would disrupt the profitable status quo. The Philippines' increasingly vocal opposition isn't just about sovereignty. It's about positioning itself as the primary victim in a system where victim status generates billions in international military aid, preferential trade agreements, and insurance company partnerships. The United States' freedom of navigation operations aren't really about navigation. They're about maintaining its role as the security guarantor in a system where security threats generate more revenue than security solutions. The ultimate reverse perspective: here's the perspective that 99% of people are missing. The South China Sea dispute is the world's first successful attempt at conflict monetization at maritime scale. It's not about territory resources or even geopolitical dominance. It's about creating a perpetual profit machine disguised as a territorial dispute. The real winners aren't the countries making headlines, but the industries that have turned tension into the most sophisticated subscription economy in human history. Every water cannon incident, every joint military exercise, every diplomatic protest generates measurable revenue for companies most people have never heard of. The South China Sea has become the world's most expensive reality TV show, where the drama never ends because ending would collapse a $500 billion economy built on the fiction that this is actually about islands and fishing rights. When viewed from 2075, this period will be remembered not as a territorial dispute, but as the moment when humanity learned to monetize geopolitical tension itself, turning conflict from a problem to be solved into a product to be sold. The question isn't whether this will end, but whether other regions will adopt the same model. Because if the South China Sea experiment proves anything, it's that, in the 21st century, managed conflict is the most profitable business model ever invented.